Now we'll discuss one of the liveliest and most formative movements in theater. It's a movement that started in Italy during the Italian Renaissance and grew throughout the Western world. We're talking about a special brand of theater referred to as the Commedia dell'arte. Commedia dell'arte, translated from the Italian, means the professional players or the professional comedians. It's the first time in theater history that we have individuals making a living at putting on plays, the first professionals in the art of theater. Previous to this, plays were put on as amateur productions. Another important first instituted by the Commedia dell'arte is that it is the first time we see women performing on stage. Prior to this period, all of the roles, even the female characters, were performed by men. This tradition continued in other parts of the world, including in England, where Shakespeare's female characters were played by men or members of the boys' companies. Also, with Commedia dell'arte, the art of comedy comes into full bloom. Many of the elements of comedy that are still used today were instituted and perfected by the Commedia dell'arte. The comedy of the Commedia dell'arte had its roots in the plays of the ancient Greek comic playwrights such as Aristophanes, but perhaps they were even more closely influenced by the popular comedies of the ancient Romans, most notably the comedies of Plautus. The plays of Plautus, who lived between 254 and 184 BC, have all the same elements found in the improvisations of the Commedia dell'arte. Plautus's plays were immensely popular during his lifetime, and, as evidence from their influence on the Commedia dell'arte, which came into existence nearly 16 centuries later, have been influenced on the formation of all comedy. Plautus's plays introduced such perennial comic types as the nagging wife, the sidekick, and the arrogant fool. Commedia dell'arte no doubt began humbly in the 16th century with a few companies in Italy performing characters based on Plautus types. But soon it became so popular that there emerged several countries in Italy that eventually toured all of Europe, so that by the following century, there were commedia troupes throughout the Western world. Its popularity continued until well into the 18th century. To understand the Commedia dell'arte and its impact on comedy and theater, we need to be aware of three elements central to all Commedia dell'arte troupes: the art of improvisation, the employment of stock characters, and the use of standard comic business referred to as lazzi. The comedies were broad and physical. As we will learn later, the term slapstick came from the Commedia dell'arte. The circus clowns with which we are familiar are descendants of the Commedia dell'arte stock characters. First, it is important to know that Commedia dell'arte performances were accomplished at the art of improvisation. Improvisation is the art of creating play productions without scripts. Some improvisation is done by creating characters and action on the spot. Each player adapts to the action of the other players, and they create a scene without knowing how it will end. Another type of improvisation is where situations and scenes are improvised in the rehearsal process, and then a series of scenes are created and prepared from these rehearsals. By the time it is presented to an audience, the action has been established and it unfolds much like a scripted play does, even though a script was never involved in the process. Other improvisations are a combination of both of these. The actors create characters and situations in rehearsal, but when the performance goes before an audience, they freely improvise their lines and actions based on the reaction of the audience. The Commedia dell'arte is well known for engaging in this last type of improvisation. Rather than performing from scripts, the Commedia dell'arte would perform from written scenarios that were often hung in a location where all of the company could reference. The scenario was a brief outline of the action, the order of the scenes, and which characters would appear in each scene. The actors would use this as a reference and then freely improvise the action, at times straying from the scenario depending on the reaction of the audience. All Commedia troupes performed improvised comedies. They also utilized the same stock characters. For instance, every Commedia dell'arte troupe had a character who was called Pantalone. This character exhibited the same characteristics in all Commedia troupes. We will take a closer look at the most significant stock characters of the Commedia dell'arte in the next section. Now, go to your task for this section and complete your assignment.